Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be delving through my tiered quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end rankings for Week 14. Please keep in mind that players who are on bye, any New England Patriots players, Carolina Panthers players, etc., are not going to be included in these rankings, and neither are players who played on Thursday night, so that would be your Dallas Cowboys or Detroit Lions players. So with that in mind, let's get into my tiered quarterback rankings. At the top, I have Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Matt Stafford. Fun fact, Josh Allen has been held to under 20 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. I don't think that continues here against Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati has played a lot better defense the past couple of weeks than they did when they were historically bad at the beginning of the season, but I do think this is going to be a true duel between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, and I like both of these guys a lot this week. In the next tier, I have Lamar, Hurts, Daniels, Jones, and Love. With Lamar Jackson, he has gone 3 weeks in a row without a passing touchdown. I think this is not going to continue against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I do think that the Ravens get on back on track this week. The next year, I have Baker, Nix, and Herbert. With Justin Herbert, he's supposed to play this week. He did have surgery briefly on that hand, I believe. But the Philadelphia Eagles are also going to be without Jalen Carter this week, who had surgery on both shoulders. And so I think that the run game and pass game is going to be a lot more successful in the absence of Jalen Carter for the Chargers offense as a whole. In the next year, I have Mahomes, Darnold, Taylor, Lawrence, and Chuck. Patrick Mahomes, he's coming off a 4-touchdown game this past week against the Dallas Cowboys. Here against Houston, they shut down Josh Allen. I think that this is a very risky day for Mahomes as a whole. I do think that Rashee Rice is still going to be just fine. I think he's going to get a lot of scammy production, which is going to be great for us in fantasy. But I think that the offense as a whole is going to suffer this week against Houston. In the next tier, I have Rodgers, Caleb, Brissett, and CJ Stroud. With Jacoby Brissett, I do think he's going to be able to get some volume stats to both McBride and Michael Wilson, but I do think this is going to be a turnover-prone kind of a game for him because the Rams' defense is absolutely no joke. In the next tier, I have Tua, Shedeur, and Kirk Cousins. With Shedeur Sanders, this is a matchup that he could potentially exploit, but we haven't really seen a dominant showing from him yet. So I do want to be a little bit conservative with him. And then in the final tier, we have Nine, Ward, and Geno Smith. With JJ McCarthy, this should be a matchup that he can exploit. Bo Nix didn't really go off against him this past week, but JJ McCarthy has just been a massive disappointment this year, and the line is fine. He has great coaching. He has great playmakers. It's just going to be up to him to develop as a quarterback. And I would generally prefer to bench him if at all possible. Moving on to the running back rankings. In the top tier, I have Achane, Bijan, Breece, and James Cook. With Breece Hall, he's playing against Miami. I have him ranked a lot higher than I suspect a lot of people are going to have him ranked. I think that Tyrod Taylor improves the efficiency of the offense overall. We're going to see more scoring opportunities. I think he's going to be efficient on the ground and through the air, and I think we get a touchdown from him this week. In the next tier, I have Brown, Judkins, Henry, Irving, and Williams. I want to mention Chase Brown here. I really like his receiving upside in this game against Buffalo. I want to start all skill position players for the Cincinnati Bengals if possible. I think this could be a very high-scoring game potentially. In the next tier, I have Etienne, Hampton, and Harvey. I want to mention Amari and Hampton. He's supposed to be returning from IR this week. I don't think that he sees necessarily the full workload, but at the same time, I think he's going to be incredibly efficient on the ground. And Philadelphia, once again, is going to be missing Jalen Carter, so I think this is a matchup he can exploit, and I think he's a solid bet for a touchdown as well. In the next tier, I have Genty, Taylor, Jacobs, Barkley, Swift, and Aaron Jones. I want to mention Jonathan Taylor. He's playing against Jacksonville in 3 of the past 4 weeks in which he's played. He did have a bye week in between. He's been basically shut down, held to at least around 10 or fewer points. I think this is a matchup to avoid, but at the same time, he's Jonathan Taylor. I highly doubt you have the running backs that you could afford to bench Jonathan Taylor. So at the same time, you still probably have to play him, right? The next year, I have Warren, Neal, Marks, Walker, and Kareem Hunt. With Kareem Hunt, I do think he's going to be a solid low-end RB2 this week against Houston. I do think that the offense as a whole is going to struggle a little bit more, but I do think that Houston is a little bit more exploitable on the ground than they are through the air as a whole. In the next tier, I have Monangai, Rodriguez, and Charbonnet. Charbonnet scored in 2 straight weeks, and while he doesn't get a ton of volume, and he's not really the highest upside guy when Kenneth Walker plays at the same time, he has scored once again twice in a row, and so I think he's a solid bet to score a touchdown again this week. In the next tier, I have Knight, Gainwell, Vidal, Algier, and Tyler Tyjae Spears rather. I want to mention Zonovan Knight. He's also scored in 3 straight games. This, however, is basically as bad of a matchup as you can get. The Rams do allow the fewest points to running backs, but at the same time, he's been the lead back for the most part, especially on the ground, but a little bit through the air as well. So I still think that he's a solid RB3 flex option for you, but I wouldn't get your hopes as high as it probably has been a couple of the past 3 weeks. And then the final tier, I have Tootin, Mason, Carter, Corum, and Tony Pollard. I want to mention Bashal Tootin. I do think that he's going to get a little bit more volume in this game against Indianapolis. I think he hasn't been a consistently efficient player, but he also is getting a decent amount of goal line usage. And so I think he's also a decent bet to score a touchdown this week, at least among running backs that are, potential flex options. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, Infamy MTG, AOYOB, and The Dawn. Without your support, this would not be possible. As you're probably well aware if you've been watching my videos for a while, I cannot get monetized because of the film breakdowns I do, and even just the little videos I have where I have clips of plays in them. They get demonetized every single time, making it, therefore, impossible to collect any revenue. So, obviously, your support is greatly appreciated. And if you are so inclined to become a member, the perks would be you will get access to a private Discord where we have both a real life and fantasy football chat, as well as a voice chat if you just don't want to have to type a bunch of stuff. I'll also give you detailed roster breakdowns and roster reviews where we talk about the strengths and weaknesses of your team. Then we kind of break it down further by looking into the scoring settings themselves and the starting lineup requirements to help you build the best team to help you dominate for years to come. In both Dynasty and then in Redraft, obviously, I'd help you with a good, solid game plan, especially if you know where you're drafting from. Then also give you detailed trade advice based on your specific league settings to help you dominate. Also give you access to private live streams and the ability to not only see videos at least one day early, but also the ability to suggest videos that you would like to be created. So if you would like to support the channel, I would really appreciate it. If not, just please like and subscribe. Let's get back to the video. Moving on to my tiered wide receiver rankings. In the top tier, I have JSN, Chase, Nakua, and Collins. JSN had a rare blip on the radar game this past week. I think he's going to return to his wide receiver 1 ways against Atlanta in a matchup that is exploitable. In the next tier, I have Rice, Wilson, Adams, and A.J. Brown. I want to mention Michael Wilson here. In the absence of Marvin Harrison Jr. the past couple of weeks, but playing with Brissett specifically, he has gone nuclear. And I think this is a matchup, the Rams cornerback specifically at least, that you can exploit, although their run defense and just defense in general definitely isn't to be messed with as a whole. In the next year, I have Olave, Higgins, Pittman, and Sutton. I want to mention T. Higgins. He's coming back from a concussion. He's been cleared. I think this is a matchup he can also exploit, and I really like, basically, once again, all of the Cincinnati Bengals skill position players this week. In the next year, I have McConkey, McLaurin, Myers, and DK Metcalf. Jacoby Myers, since he's arrived at Jacksonville, has been absolutely solid. This is a plus matchup against the Colts, a divisional matchup, and a matchup that I think he can exploit. The next year, I have Ibuka, Samuel, Godwin, Smith, Pierce, Shakir, and Burden. 2 players I want to mention here. Chris Godwin. He was very efficient with the targets in which he was given, but he actually dropped a wide open touchdown this past week. And so he could have had a pretty big week, considering he's just coming back from, the second injury he sustained this season. So I think that he is going to be potentially a more regular wide receiver 2 type play, potentially a little bit at the expense of Ibuka, who's kind of been operating as the de facto wide receiver 1 because everyone else has been hurt. And then Luther Burden has a big chance to step up in the absence of Rome Odunze, who's going to miss this game with a foot stress fracture. So I really like the upside of Luther Burden this week because he is dynamic with the ball in his hands. In the next tier, I have Watson, Jefferson, Flowers, Waddle, Higgins, and Troy Franklin. Jaden Higgins has been quietly solid the past 4 weeks or so. He's getting more target volume, being relatively efficient with them, and getting around 50 to 60 yards a game with touchdown upside. So I think he's a sneaky upside type of player. Troy Franklin, another player who had been getting a lot of target volume, about 6 to 10 targets a game for a good 5-week stretch before randomly having 2 this past week. I think he returns to being more active in the lineup. In the next year, I have BTJ, Dobbs, and John Mechie. I think Romeo Dobbs specifically this week is a good bet to score a touchdown against the Chicago Bears, who are dealing with cornerback injuries, despite the fact that they seem to get endless amounts of turnovers. They do allow yardage. In the next tier and final tier, I have DK, Mitchell, Vele, and Darnell Mooney. I want to mention Devon Vele. He and Tyler Shuck seem to have a pretty good connection. Vele cooked this past week, and this is also a matchup that he could potentially exploit and could necessitate a decent amount of scoring in order to win against what could potentially be, once again, a potent Buccaneers offense if they get things starting to click again. Moving on to my tiered tight end rankings. In the top tier, I have McBride and Bowers. Both have exploitable matchups. Both are some of the most talented tight ends. I don't really think there's too much to explain there. In the next tier, I have Warren and Pitts. Kyle Pitts goes on these streaks where he'll have a couple of games in a row with solid target volume. Then he'll be erased for 3 or 4 weeks, and then see these streaks of consistent target volume once again. He and Kirk Cousins appear to have a decent enough connection, and he's received a decent amount of volume this past week. This is the way to exploit the Seattle defense if there is a way to do so. And so I think that Kyle Pitts is going to be one of the few pass catchers in this offense to have a ton of success this week. In the next tier, I have Fannin, Kincaid, Strange, Juwan Johnson, and Mason Taylor. I think Kincaid returns from injury this week. He is questionable, but I do think this is a great matchup for him in what projects to be a high-scoring game. And so I think he's a solid, high upside option, and I think he's a decent bet to score a touchdown if he plays. And Brenton Strange against Indianapolis. I think Brenton Strange is a very underrated tight end. This is a matchup he can exploit against Indianapolis, and I think he gets it done. In the next tier, I have Ertz, Kelsey, and Gadsden. With Rondé Gadsden, after that hot streak, in the middle of the year, he's kind of trailed off a little bit. Against Philadelphia, this is a pretty rough matchup, but he still has a ton of upside in this Justin Herbert offense. So I do think you could do worse than him. But it is a little bit sad to see his volume kind of go away with time here. In the next tier, I have Helm, Loveland, Andrews, and Goddard. Gunnar Helm is somebody I mentioned from week to week. The past 2 weeks, he's seen, I believe, 8 targets in both of the past 2 weeks. He's been a sneaky play recently, and I do think that this is a matchup that they are going to look to get him the ball in, and I think he's starting to take over the role of Chig Okonkwo. In the next tier, I have Barner, Ingram, Schultz, Waller, and Hawkinson. With TJ Hawkinson, he has been getting a little bit more target volume lately. We'll see about how 9 plays this week. I'm just so hesitant to play any skill position players on the Vikings if I don't have to, just because the offense has just not been great. But still a very talented player nonetheless. And in the final tier, I have Washington, Otten, and Gesicki. With Gesicki, he's seen, I believe, 6 and 4 targets since his return from IR. I do think that this is a potential touchdown scoring kind of a game, even in a tough matchup. So I do think is it, a last ditch effort that he is a high enough touchdown option here. And moving on to the final tier, I have Washington, Otten, and Gesicki. I want to mention Mike Gesicki here. It's not a great matchup against Buffalo in and of itself, but I do think that once again, if you're desperate enough, I think he is a good enough bet to score a touchdown if you had to throw in one of these kind of flyer tight ends into the lineup, because I do think this projects to be a high scoring game. So I do think that you could do worse if you don't have any established tight end that you feel comfortable starting. So where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Let me know below in the comment section. Once again, if you would be so kind, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my Patreon. I'm doing this full time now. If you cannot or do not wish to, if you could just like the video, subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a good day.